So my name's Scott. Yep, I'm at IDBS. I'm also, hands up, I'm a biologist, so I'm in a chemistry forum. It's always a challenge when I have to stand up here credibly. I joined IDBS about 2004, having spent about 15 years in industry. And I've been part of our product management group since I joined. I'm currently responsible for our portfolio, ActivityBase and E-WorkBook. And what I want to talk you through today from a vendor's perspective is some of the technology choices that we're making in terms of how we want to grow our portfolio and our user base. So, let's see here. So I don't know if all of you know who IDBS is. We are a UK founded and based company, about 25 years old. Our first product was ActivityBase, which was a screening solution, and it's still going strong. Our focus, though, is really to provide informatics solutions that are end-to-end, from research through development into early-stage manufacturing. Our products are mature. Let's put it that way. ActivityBase, 25 years. E-WorkBook now pushing 9 years. I was part of the original E-WorkBook team. You can see I had dark hair when I started. That's kind of puts the date of the product on there. Our biggest product to date, though, is the E-WorkBook platform. It's known mainly for its function as an electronic lab notebook, but it has a lot more in the box than just an ELN. We have inventory management, formulations management, assay execution. It's really our premier platform. Our primary market is enterprise customers, not small potatoes, but we deal with companies who want to invest in infrastructure on-premise or hosted to deliver these end-to-end solutions. We talk about pharma. Pharma is probably 80% of my business, but the problems that we solve really span multiple business verticals. So we have a lot of customers now in the engineering space, and we have in food and bev, the agrochemical business, and increasingly we're spending a lot of our time dealing with industrial chemicals and oil and gas companies where chemistry is very important. It's a little bit of a different chemistry. It's not so much medicinal chemistry. A lot of it's process-oriented, but nonetheless, they are capturing and manage chemical data in our products. So what is our product stack? Well, those two products, E-WorkBook and ActivityBase, they've got a lot of historical capabilities between them. ActivityBase, for example, has compound registration. It has object management. We do inventory, assay execution. So really, it's a broad portfolio of tools that we configure on a customer-by-customer basis to deliver different kinds of functionality and use cases around. But you see down there, chemical informatics and bioinformatics, they're still part and parcel core of our business. Ultimately, if I like to describe what we do, anybody who's making a product and wants to test that product and report on the results of that product is a potential consumer of our services and products. Now, I put up here just maybe for a little bit of a giggle, but it's true. IDBS do chemistry. We invested in our own chemistry technology about 15 years ago. It was really because in our product at the time, ActivityBase, our customers were wanting to register materials, register plates, and execute tests on those. So we built our own Oracle cartridge. We have our own rendering components. We've integrated these into our reporting tools for SAR analysis. So we really do have a legacy here with chemistry. And it's interesting, I put this Gartner report up here that kind of rates our capabilities across the spectrum, gave us a pretty good score when it came to our chemistry capabilities. But it was interesting. I think we've done an okay job on chemistry. We don't have the depth of subject matter experts that you would see at a company like ChemAxon, that's for sure. But nonetheless, our penetration in this market has been very minuscule. We have sold our chemistry technology predominantly to smaller companies who want a one-stop shop. We've had limited penetration into the bigger players. And if you follow the ELN market, you'll know that most of the ELNs at your big pharmaceuticals are probably an Accelerus/MDL type of product or maybe a PerkinElmer product. And increasingly, we don't see it to be penetrating any more into that market. We see ChemAxon coming into the market and stealing some of that market share. So if I had to put the top 3 chemistry providers, I've just listed them. And I don't know where IDBS falls in that, 5, 6, 15. It's pretty low down the list. Nonetheless, I've got a functionality gap that I have to maintain. So I mentioned broadly where the IDBS chemistry space is. For ActivityBase, we have our own registration system. We do a lot of assay execution and SAR analysis, so reporting capabilities. And then for E-WorkBook, we have a chemistry ELN that does reaction planning, stoichiometry, reagent selection, We've also partnered with ChemAxon historically to deliver some functionality, such as reaction enumeration with Reactor, structure to name, and some property calculators. Now, when I'm sitting down and we're building our portfolio and thinking about where we want to go in the future, where did I want to be when I was planning some of the latest developments a few years back? We're looking at our product being a bit old, long in the tooth, a desktop product, a thick client, and we're turning up and people are saying, what are you doing about iPhones? What are you doing about mobility? Have you thought about the cloud? Can you host your products? What about interconnectivity, lab of the future, and the Internet of Things? So, we've got a lot of trends, outsourcing, externalization, and the whole social connectivity of aspects. So when we were trying to build our next iteration of our platforms, we were very much thinking about these trends. How do we get this ready for the cloud? How do we help support hosting and SaaS? How do we support mobility? And we've gone through an exercise over the last few years of modernizing our application. We didn't go out and buy another product. We didn't build another product. We actually took our 3-tier architecture, revved up the application tier, put in a whole new slew of RESTful web services, and began building new clients on top of that were cloud ready, that could run on mobile devices in a browser with no installable components. So it's been a big job. And we very much see the evolution of our products, and the industry in general is going away from these heavy desktop tools. Increasingly, they're not just web-enabled products. The first wave that you're seeing now are tools which can be installed on private infrastructure, either a virtual private cloud or on-prem, but are web, so that you can run them across platforms. And moving from there, the trend is pretty inexorable. You can see everyone is moving to the cloud. They're looking at exporting this, having somebody else manage the services, manage the infrastructure, and deliver SaaS. So my technical strategy on the biggest level was to how do we get to that point as quickly as possible. The other thing that I took as an opportunity when we've done this redesign is to really rethink the UI. We've been in this race of ticking off boxes of a zillion features, and everybody can rack up and say, I can do X, Y, and Z. I think increasingly the expectation of our consumers, a newer, younger generation of users, is very different to what gray hairs like me put up with. Those thick, complicated desktop products with 1 billion options and so many features was great for me as a super user. People want simplicity, they want ease of use, they want a seamless experience. So it was important for our architecture and our design to reflect that. So again, when we were choosing how to go forward, we were thinking about that as part of our partner strategy as well. And finally, I think one other aspect which is very interesting is that, I come from a background of R&D, working for big pharma. And if we again look at our customer base, it's a shrinking demographic. The big pharma are outsourcing increasingly. They're letting staff go. They're relocating. They're acquiring biotechs. You're seeing this trend, for a number of reasons. One of them is, the big pharma want to innovate. They want the latest technology. They're looking at reducing their costs. And that presents some interesting opportunities and challenges for vendors. The existing infrastructure that we've delivered in the past is not terribly well suited to working in this kind of virtualized environment where you have third parties that aren't actually even part of your organization that you want to collaborate with. So we've been thinking long and hard about how we can also cater to this virtualized lab environment in terms of collaboration. So if I had to summarize it up, yes, we're moving to the cloud, but we're using this as an opportunity to focus on a real simplified, seamless experience that's intuitive for the end user, that has a high level of customization for the user himself to personalize his interface, his experience, his searches, the way he views his content, and to really encourage collaboration as things become more virtualized and companies need to work together. So back to chemistry, where is that story taking me? Well, I've been executing a program to modernize our software for the last few years. E-WorkBook itself is kind of at the forefront of that. We launched E-WorkBook 10 at the start of this calendar year, and the majority of this product is now running seamlessly in a browser, backwards compatible, but the one big chunk that I don't have at the start of this year is a chemistry strategy. So we had some big choices to make. And as I said, our chemistry demographic has changed. We're not just dealing with screeners and testers or medicinal chemists. We've got guys in petrochemicals, we've got field engineers, we've got a lot of process chemistry, a lot of non-life science chemistry to support as well. So I had to really kind of come back and take a look at our development organization, our own skill set, and say, what are we going to do? Are we going to rev up a team that at the moment is focused on IDBS technology, desktop bound, and train them and get them up to speed, or are we going to go out to market and reconsider our position here? And the conclusion that I came up with is that chemistry was simply not one of our core assets. You know, we're number 7 in the market. If we came out with a new product that was on the web, are we going to change that position? And I thought, the conclusion I came up with was no. So we really needed to look at an alternative strategy. I want to deliver the best end-to-end solution, and we're excellent at biology. We're not so great at chemistry. Let's partner. I wanted to get to market fast, which means I needed existing web-enabled components out of the box if I wanted to improve my products. And I wanted to get a brand that the market recognized, that I could go to market with and say, hey, it's not IDBS chemistry, it's this chemistry, which you know and you highly value. So we looked at a number of things. We looked at open source products, we looked at other chemistry vendors, but ultimately we did settle on working with ChemAxon. Part of that was because we had a trusting relationship that had spanned for some years anyway. We've been working very happily together with our existing products. Part of it is that when we went out and asked our customers, ChemAxon just kept coming up again and again. You know, I don't want to poo-poo some of the other competitors, but there's a lot of noise in the market about another rev and change, looking at how some of the big companies might be changing their registration subsystems, moving away from some of their legacy infrastructure and taking on board ChemAxon more broadly. We heard this from a lot of our primary customers. Very good things about ChemAxon. And you saw, I think if you were here yesterday, you saw the evolution of the ChemAxon product stack to Plexus and very much web first. It was a perfect fit for our technology choices and how we wanted to go to the web. So, some of the things that we've already begun working on. Now, my roadmap, we have our next release of E-WorkBook coming out 10.1 at the end of this calendar year. We've just begun some of the work to integrate the Marvin and JChem technology directly into the products. Our first iteration of E-WorkBook 10.1 will deliver direct native handling of the Marvin format using Marvin.js in the browser so that you can draw, render, and store chemical information. JChem is underneath for the indexing technology, and we're surfacing that through our own search interface. So some of the things that were so easy to do with the technology stack provided was right off the bat being able to embed Marvin.js components directly in our ELN. It was a really easy experience. It's got excellent APIs, excellent documentation, and working with the guys here at ChemAxon has been a very, very pleasant experience. So we've got that up running very quickly. It's got enough hooks for us to embellish that and add our own kind of slant to it, but it was a very painless experience. The other piece that we're investigating for next year is the registration capabilities. So by the middle of next year, I want to get rid of all of the E-WorkBook IDBS flavored chemistry out of our web, have the web client running entirely off the ChemAxon platform. So right now we're evaluating what options we have for recreating our own registration system. The idea here will be, it will be a standalone component that can be shared by both E-WorkBook, our notebook, as well as ActivityBase. It'll have its own front end, but it will be directly integrated in a seamless fashion with both the notebook and the testing modules. So we've been doing some prototypes here about how we can push directly from the notebook into the registration subsystem. Things that we're evaluating is whether we build the registration components ourselves or perhaps come back and work with Kmax on some of their existing registration tools to drive that for us. Another big thing, we heard a little bit about this. This was a big deciding factor for us. We can get away with no Oracle. Big deal for us because as we want to move to the cloud, Oracle is going to be a real pain in the backside in terms of licensing costs. And finally, another key thing for us, this is where we really get to branch out and where we can take advantage of the work that's being done here at ChemAxon. They have a wonderful, expansive vocabulary and library of tools for representing more complex things. You know, whether it's Marcouche, which we get a lot of questions around, whether it's things like haptic bonds and long-chain polymers for some of the other industries outside of life sciences. And then finally, you heard a little bit about the biologics toolkit that's under work. We're very, very, very much aligned with them in terms of the Helm standard and working on that for large molecules. So key things for the roadmap. Lots of my portfolio is now in flight because of the relationship with ChemAxon. All those things in yellow are things that ChemAxon are touching. So I kind of just a summary of those things. We are going to be launching in October a collaboration portal that's 100% SaaS. It's called E-WorkBook Connect. It's a portal that sits on top of E-WorkBook designed specifically for externalization and collaboration. It's tightly integrated with the on-prem E-WorkBook. We've already embedded the ChemAxon technology in that so that we can cater to contract manufacturing workflows and then bring that content back into E-WorkBook. The important thing for this is our first venture into true SaaS. This is an IDBS hosted system that's running natively on Amazon Web Services. The second module, which is coming out, we are launching a web-based tool for managing inventory, reagents, materials, instrumentation that's directly integrated into E-WorkBook. It was neat to see that yesterday the same need was identified at ChemAxon with their roadmap for next year. 10.1 I just mentioned is our first phase of chemistry. It's not going to have reaction planning, but it will deliver the ability to capture, draw, represent, and search chemical objects directly in E-WorkBook. ChemBook is our chemistry ELN, which has got an end-to-end solution for medicinal and synthetic chemists. That's slated for mid-2016. And we will also be looking at our first iteration of a registration system in the same sort of time frame. The other product I didn't mention a lot, it's a little bit lagging behind. ActivityBase still has a little bit of infrastructure updates to get it to the same point as E-WorkBook in terms of web services and APIs. We're looking at the second half of 2016 to begin looking at what we can deliver through that. As I mentioned, we have a lot of SAR tools and reporting tools. If we can get the registration system stood up first, we can plumb that into ActivityBase and begin to allow customers using ChemAxon directly through ACE. And finally, at the end of next year, I hope to take all of my existing E-WorkBook chemistry customers who are currently running a desktop product and provide them a direct replacement for all that capability in the web client and begin migrating them off their desktop product. All right, so I really wasn't here to demo my software. It would be nice if I could do that, but I would probably not make the best show of it, not being a chemist. But if you want more information, if you want to follow up and maybe learn a little bit more about what we're doing with E-WorkBook and ActivityBase, see a demo of some of these things running Kmax Live, I've got some contact information, so feel free to either reach out to me or directly to our marketing team and visit our website. So with that, hopefully I can take some questions.
Just curious what you're using instead of Oracle?
Well, you can start with, obviously, with the JChem base. We currently on Connect, we're not using Oracle as the backend, we're using MySQL databases. And for our own internal, we'll probably stick away. We'll either use MySQL or it looks like there's some new cartridges that are coming out. But ideally, we would like something that could run natively on some of the different systems like Amazon Web Services RDS. You can't install cartridges onto that RDS system, so it would be a non-cartridge approach if we want to make that apply into a true SaaS product. So.
In the vein of moving towards more technology-friendly for small company solutions, lots of companies have talked about moving to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Have you considered, and how does IDBS play on tablets?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. Yeah. I mean, you either have the choice of building a browser-based app that has all the gesture support, or you go with a dedicated app. So for us, what we've done is a sort of a hybrid approach. We feel that you're not going to reproduce every aspect of the web client perfectly on a tablet. Things like browsing, consumption, simple annotations, those should be tablet-friendly running through the native client. But a lot of our applications are very data-intensive. And you can imagine, I don't think it's going to be really realistic for a user to curate curve fits and annotate large data sets on the tablet from a web browser-based interface. Yeah. The complementary bits of that is we already have some tablet-based apps, which are native iOS apps, that just do discrete, simple things very well. They're not trying, again, to be the entire notebook or screening experience, but things like reviewing content, approval, task alerts, annotations, and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
I guess there's already API to access the content within that BioBook. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a big RESTful web service library. You can bring the documents out, you can access the security model, the ontology tier. We've got a pretty broad RESTful web service library that we've built our own web client on top of. That's public and part of the license.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Cara.